Okay. We were gonna do a thing.
Well, I've been,
Yeah,
I've been
we
recording
were.
this. Don't worry, this is all podcastable.
Okay.
It's not.
I
Please
will
don't put this
use
out.
this. No, please let me use this.
My favorite
God,
thing
I have
about
such
Discworld
mixed
is that you
emotions.
don't have to give a shit about fantasy to like really enjoy it. Like maybe some of the earlier ones, it's harder, as we experienced in Equal Rights, but the rest of the time, thank God.
I mean,
Yeah.
you experienced that. I don't think either Mulch or I have anything like against.
I do.
Well, we talked about it with Equal Rights, how it was the first book to have differentiated gender role for magic, and thus made you more uncomfortable, even though it was a commentary and a satire of that.
Yeah. Oh no, I thought we were talking about like fantasy as the genre, because I think you might be the only one inside of this group that is like does not like fantasy. Period.
Yeah, I think I am. I'm really these days. I feel like I'm much more. It's much more rare to really dislike fantasy, which is backwards from how I expected the future to be.
The thing is, like, for me, they're just fantasy is such a big blanket genre that it's like I read a lot of manga, and I'd say like most manga is some form of speculative fiction, be it, and most of the time it's either just kind of like vaguely supernatural or fantasy.
Yeah, there's a lot of fantasy anime.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
And like
there is a lot of fantasy anime. See, the thing is with fantasy anime is I love a lot of fantasy, but so much fantasy is D&D fantasy, which is like isekai and like
I dislike boilerplate fantasy. I dislike the sort of Tolkien-esque style of fantasy.
Like hard fantasy.
Even though in a way I feel like that does Tolkien a disservice, because like
it's not his fault.
Yeah, it's not his fault. I mean, even though I don't like Tolkien, I feel like I don't like him for specific reasons. And then I just dislike boilerplate fantasy because I find it boring.
Grating. Yeah, I just really don't vibe with fantasy. I feel like every time I'm reading something that's fantasy, I a little bit in the back of my head think, man, you could probably explore this concept better with some sci-fi, huh?
You
could probably do the same concept, but like way better in sci-fi, huh?
So you said you like trashy sci-fi, right?
I like sci-fi a lot. Yeah, I participate in almost all levels of sci-fi.
You should read Gideon the Ninth. I think that would be enjoyable for you.
That doesn't sound trashy, though. It sounds...
The first book's plot is a little trashy. The characterization and everything else is classy, but Gideon the Ninth is about lesbian space necromancers, and it's pretty great.
Yeah, that sounds pretty up my alley.
Oh yeah, here's the thing I'd like to say, because it's true, and also because it pisses people off.
You don't like The Shining?
Okay.
That is also the case. But what I was going to say is that Homestuck made queer speculative fiction good. I'm just throwing that out there.
It did that? It was... No. So, no. I can't. What are you talking about? There was plenty of good queer speculative fiction before 2013 or whatever the fuck. 2009? When did Homestuck start?
Was there though?
Yes. I really strongly feel like strongly that we have a fundamentally warped perception of like queer culture, because during the like pre-2000, queer culture was going really strong, and throughout the 2000s, it saw a huge failure. But that's exactly when we grew up, and so what we got was a blank space of 10 fucking years where no good content came out, and then shit like Homestuck, and we were like, this is revolutionary, this is incredible, and it's actually fucking
send me a bunch of
garbage.
Send me a bunch of speculative queer fiction pre-Homestuck, and I will judge whether or not it's good. Because there is a very real possibility that it's just that awful blank space.
That the queer community was stronger throughout the 90s than it was now or afterwards.
Is the 2000s was a real low point.
Just, I think, in history. Just for everyone.
Yeah, it was just the Bush years were real rough.
Well, and Bill Clinton. Let's not give him any birth. Bill Clinton fucked a lot of shit up. I think I was talking to one of you about this before, but the fucking transformative revolutionary period of the 1990s moving into the absolute white boy summer of the 2000s is such a heavy and strong whiplash that it almost breaks me. And I think that we should not let Bill Clinton get away with none of the blame for how that transformation happened.
Oh, no. I don't disbelieve you. It's just that I don't remember the Clinton administration.
Well, it happened when we were 3, so...
Yeah, so I'm just talking about my memories growing up.
I know, I just feel like we should blame Bill Clinton.
Yeah, that was a rough time for queer culture. A real rough time.
It was weird, because, it's partially the,
Or I guess it was very much a time when queerness in the mainstream was very much just so strongly dictated by straight people and kind of revolved around straight people.
Yeah, I think it was a weird time because we saw more fractures in the community. From my perspective, what I see is, as the 1990s were rolling through, cis, gay, and lesbian people are starting to receive more rights and starting to be their own kind of faction that is a lot stronger. And what we see is this huge dip as they start to
very
gain
specifically
more rights.
White.
Hey,
white cis gays.
Everything I say implies white first. if I'm saying some kind of privilege, just assume white's in there. I just don't have enough time to say white every time. But as they got more rights, they moved away from the movement, and they moved away from supporting what they would think of as the fringes, right? The less important groups to some extent. You don't have to accept queer people. You don't have to accept gender queer people to be gay or lesbian. So it's not important to you. So you start getting these factions. You start having this argument, and the whole queer community becomes so much weaker.
It seems like a lot of the public visibility of gayness during the 2000s was about making gayness non-threatening to straight people, or going, see, we're not like those other queers. We're just like you.
Yeah, ideas of queer acceptance and all of that were certainly,
or a lot of
huge. And
a lot of it seems to be treating people who are visibly gender non-conforming as punchlines.
Yeah, that will never change, maybe, but
yeah. But it seemed more like there was more of it within representations of gayness, or about going there are the acceptable gays who
are good, and then there are the effeminate gays.
Yeah.
Just too effeminate, and they're the joke.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel that in a strong way.
Yeah, and I would
and to a lesser extent, lesbians who were too mask were
and I will
much to a lesser extent.
Yeah, and we have talked about that some showed me a horrifying video about Homestuck. I did not realize all of the terrible Homestuck drama there was.
I'm terrified.
It was kind of
I'm terrified,
a mess.
It was a 2-hour video
about the history of Homestuck and what's happening with Homestuck currently, which is a disaster. But I will say about, like, Homestuck itself is a disaster, and a lot of the, like, aspects of the fandom is a disaster, but it is true that it was an outlet for more specifically genderqueer and, like, more, like, fluid queerness. It was an outlet for that kind of, like, creation, like moving away from a more binary idea of gay and lesbian or queer, like,
and non-traditional relationships.
Yeah, and non-traditional relationships. Like, it was a huge outlet for that, and for the creation that involved and, like, included and involved that.
Yeah, I will give it mad props for its relationship dynamic magic, or whatever the fuck they call it.
And what's especially important to its Homestuck's influence is that a lot of it had an especially active and especially creative fandom, which is it had a lot of people who were not only fans of Homestuck, but were channeling that fandom into art and writing, which means that I suspect that there is going to be a queer speculative fiction boom in like 10 years.
In 10
as the
years.
individual... Yeah, because there's always a gap between a fandom and when those creators actually professionalize their work, get to the point where they're the ones who are serious about it actually start working professionally in the industry, whether it's publishing novels or making comic books or working in animation. And then even after that, there's a gap between then and when they get the power to actually do what they want.
I suppose that's true. I think it's already happening.
Sort of like
14 years is a pretty good amount of time.
And to some extent, it's like trickling.
Oh god, we're old.
It's sort of like how 90s Vertigo comics only started to become mainstream like now.
What only started to become mainstream now?
90s comic books only just start. 90s Vertigo comics only started having influence outside of the comics themselves, just like now. Because you get more and more TV shows that are aping the style of 90s Vertigo, and more and more creators who are like going, oh, my favorite comic book creator is my favorite comic book is X 90s Vertigo comic.
I gotta say, this is a really weird time to grow up and like have been a nerd when we were super young, and now people are like really into the stuff we were into when like it didn't matter before. It's like,
I mean,
it's like you and I were reading fucking stupid ass comics, and now people are like, Plant Man or whatever the fuck, and you're like, oh god, yeah, Plant Man. I guess I do remember that. Yeah, I read all of that shit. Or it'll be like,
I must say that I view all of history through the lens of Grant Morrison.
I know you do. Someone was like, yeah, I've been really getting into Alan Moore stuff, and I was like, oh my god. This is the thing human beings could say to me? I don't know about that one, Chief. I don't know about that one.
So that's what I meant about the gap. Like, of course, there are things that are influenced by Homestuck that are being published now. Like the Undertale probably being the big one. But I think there's just going to be a massive boom of it in like near future. Yeah. And I'm super excited for it.
I am always excited for queer media.
I can't believe you just sent us an article called The Difference Between Discworld, Homestuck and Discworld.
That wasn't on an article. It's just a short Tumblr post.
It is just a short Tumblr post. And it's true.
That is true. That is true.